Okay, so ready for a deep dive that's going to hit a little too close to home. We're really going to get into George Orwell's 1984. And here's the thing, we're not just rereading it,
Yeah.
We're taking those thought-provoking essays you guys share from 1984 in philosophy, Is Resistance Futile, and using those as our jumping off point.
The thing that really struck me about these essays is how they, pick apart those subtle ways our thoughts and even just our everyday behaviors are nudged. Even today, It's less about, a literal big brother watching your every move and more about those sneaky ways, we're being primed to accept control without even realizing it.
And I think that's what makes this deep dive so different, so powerful, because it's not just about a book written decades ago. It's about your world right now, today. It's about how we interact with this constant flow of information and how we even begin to figure out what truth is in this day and age.
And speaking of control, one of the things from 1984 that really freaks me out is how information is used to literally shape the reality we live in.
Oh, absolutely. Professor Davison's essay really nails it when he talks about how those memory holes Orwell wrote about, they aren't just fiction anymore. Think about it.
No, they're not. Not even close.
Our social media feeds, those algorithms, that targeted content, it's like they're burying inconvenient truths under a mountain of clickbait and distractions just as effectively as the party did in the book. I mean, it's almost like we're living with a digital version of the Ministry of Truth, right? That is such a powerful image and honestly kind of terrifying. Makes you wonder, where's the line between healthy skepticism and just straight up denying reality, especially these days with everyone talking about alternative facts and we're all stuck in our own little echo chambers online.
And that's where it gets even more interesting, because it's not just about the information itself, it's about why we're so quick to believe things, even when, and this is the crazy part, even when it goes against our own experiences, our own gut feeling, It's like Orwell was a time traveler or something, the way he explored this with Crime Stop and Doublethink.
Right. It's like he looked into some creepy crystal ball and saw the future of information warfare or something. Can you break those concepts down, especially for our listeners who haven't cracked open 1984 in a while? Because, man, those ideas still give me chills.
Absolutely. So Crime Stop, the way Orwell describes it, it's like this ability to just shut down almost instinctively any thought, any idea that the powers that be, the people in charge, deem dangerous or unacceptable. It's like self-censorship on steroids.
Yeah.
You go along with it because it's easier, You avoid the mental stress of questioning the official narrative, even if, and this is the messed up part, even if it means denying what you know to be true.
And it's scary how relevant that feels, right? When you see how fast misinformation spreads online these days and the pressure to fit in, to conform to whatever narrative is trending, especially on social media.
Exactly. And then you've got doublethink, which takes all of that to a whole other level. Doublethink is the ability to believe two totally contradictory things at the same time without your brain even short-circuiting. You accept whatever the party tells you as the truth, even if it clashes with what you know deep down inside. Think about how people in Oceania accept the party rewriting history, right? But they're still holding on to these old outlawed photos. That's doublethink in action, and it's wild.
Ugh, you're making my head spin just thinking about it. And the sad part is, we see these real-world parallels in the essays we're discussing, like confirmation bias. Our brains are practically hardwired to seek out information that reinforces what we already believe, even when the evidence is staring us right in the face.
Bingo. Professor Singh's essay digs into this, drawing a direct line between doublethink and what she calls manufactured consent. It's not about brute force, It's this constant, subtle drip, drip, drip of biased information that shapes our beliefs over time without us even realizing it.
It's almost like our own minds can be weaponized against us, which is just, I don't even know, a terrifying thought. And it reminds me of another one of those chilling concepts from 1984, the 2 minutes hate. It wasn't just about controlling what people thought, but about weaponizing their emotions.
And the messed genius of it is how the party uses this very human need to let off steam, to vent, to reinforce their control. They give people a target for all that fear and anger and enemy, even if it's totally made up. And what happens? All that potential rebellion, poof, redirected.
Man, we see that everywhere today, don't we? Politicians painting their opponents as the enemy, the media using fear-mongering headlines to grab our attention to get those clicks. It's a playbook as old as time. But Orwell, even with how bleak 1984 is, he doesn't just leave us in despair. There's this little glimmer of hope with Winston's rebellion, his struggle to hold on to who he is in this world where everyone has to be the same.
And that's where it gets really interesting, right? Because Winston's rebellion, it's not some grand, heroic stand like we see in the movies. It starts with something as simple as, like, keeping a diary, this secret little space where he can just be himself, think his own thoughts, write down his feelings without Big Brother watching.
It's like that little act of defiance, holding on to that little piece of himself. That makes Winston's story so powerful,
Yeah.
you know? And it gets you thinking about the ways we try to carve out our own mental space these days, especially with how much information and just like stimulation is out there constantly. It's exhausting.
Totally. And in her essay, Dr. Anya Sharma, she talks about needing to do these digital detoxes as a form of resistance. Like, it's not even just about escaping that information overload, but like reconnecting with our own thoughts, taking back control of what's going on inside our own heads. It's like Winston hiding away in that little corner to write in his diary.
Man, that is such a spot-on analogy, right? Just the act of disconnecting as an act of rebellion. And it's not even just about technology, is it? It's about actively shaping what's going on inside our own heads. Which brings us to, oh, this is a big one. Another huge part of resistance that Orwell really focuses on. The power of love. And I don't just mean like romance, but this bigger idea of love as this force that connects us and gives us the strength to resist.
That is such a good point, because you're right. In the face of the party trying to control every single thing about you, Winston and Julia's love affair, that becomes a revolutionary act. It's about saying, no, I choose to care for this person for who they really are. It's this connection, this emotional bond that even the party can't touch.
It's true. And it's so interesting how their relationship also shows how important language is, even beyond all that creepy newspeak stuff.
Oh, totally.
Winston and Julia, they make their own secret language, right? Using words and phrases the party has tried to twist or erase to talk about their love for each other.
Exactly. It's like they're taking language back and making it their own again. Professor Johnson actually says that Orwell's whole point about language goes way beyond just newspeak. He says the real danger is this thing he calls doublespeak, using language to hide the truth, to mess with people's emotions, and ultimately just to make real communication impossible.
That's good. Doublespeak. Like, have you ever listened to one of those political speeches where afterwards you're like, wait, what did they even say? Like a whole bunch of words, but zero substance?
Yes. Exactly. And the essays really want us to think about that, be more aware of the language being used around us. Don't just take things at face value. To pay attention to not just what's being said, but how it's being said. And even what's conveniently being left out. It's about really listening for those sneaky ways language can be used to trick us.
It's funny, we're always talking about, like, think critically, but we don't talk enough about listening critically. We're just hit with so many messages all the time. It's easy to just zone out and let it all wash over us instead of actually, like, engaging with it.
You're preaching to the choir. That is so important. And it all goes back to taking control of our own minds. It's about being present when we encounter information, not just passively swallowing it, but actively questioning it, analyzing it, figuring out how it all fits together.
Right. So it's not just about, like, spotting outright propaganda, but being aware of those sneakier ways our thoughts get messed with, being aware of how things are framed, the stories we're being told, and how those shape our view of everything around us.
Yes, 100%. And this takes us to, honestly, one of the most disturbing parts of 1984, how the party controls the past. By rewriting history, they control what people believe about their own lives, who they are, everything. It's a terrifying reminder that what we consider truth is often just a matter of how we see things, how it's presented to us.
And in a post-truth world, which is sadly what it feels like we're living in, that's a terrifying thought. It's like, if we can't even agree on what's real, then what do we have left? Remember when that whole post-truth thing became a thing? I felt like the floor had just disappeared beneath me.
Oh, I feel you. I think a lot of us felt that way. Professor Miller, in their essay, defines post-truth as the state where objective facts don't really matter anymore. What shapes public opinion is emotion, personal beliefs, that kind of thing.
So it's not even that people disagree about the facts anymore. It's that facts don't matter.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It's about this erosion of a shared reality. That common ground where we can at least start a real conversation, a debate, is just gone. And Professor Miller makes a brilliant point. This is how manipulation thrives. Because when truth becomes subjective, whoever has the most power gets to decide what's real.
Which is exactly what Orwell was trying to warn us about, right? Be careful. It's a slippery slope from alternative facts to a world where truth is jest. whatever those in charge want it to be. It's like he's holding up this mirror, right, and being like, hey, look closely. This is how easy it is to lose your freedom, bit by bit, to let the truth just slip away when you're not paying attention.
It's definitely a wake-up call, but it's not like a guaranteed future, you know?
Professor Rodriguez, in his essay, he says, look, 1984 is really a story about how tough the human spirit is. It's about never giving up, even when everything seems stacked against you.
And you're right, the book is super bleak, but there's that spark, right? That little bit of defiance that never dies, whether it's Winston holding onto his memories or those little acts of rebellion you see from the other characters. Exactly. And a bunch of the essays actually talk about that, how resistance doesn't always have to be these big dramatic gestures. It can be something as small as being willing to have a tough conversation, questioning the stories everyone's supposed to believe, or even just like looking for information from different sources, not just sticking to what everyone else is reading.
It's those everyday acts of defiance, those little cracks in the wall that really add up, especially if enough people are doing them.
100%. It's about taking back control, not just letting ourselves be spoon-fed information. And it starts with being okay with things being complicated, with different points of view, with not just retreating into our little bubbles where everyone agrees with us.
And that brings up something that's come up in a few of the essays. The role technology plays in all of this. It's really easy to demonize technology, especially when you're thinking about 1984, But these essays, they're looking at it from a different angle.
Right. Like Dr. Lee, she makes a great point. She says technology in itself isn't good or bad. It's like a hammer, right? You can use it to build a house or you can use it to hurt someone.
Okay, I see what you mean.
It all depends on the person using it. Same with technology. It can be used to control us, like Orwell wrote about, but it can also be this amazing tool to connect, to learn, to help people who are being ignored get their voices heard. It's all about how we use it.
That is such an important point. It's not about like throwing our phones away and hiding in a cave. It's about being smart, being critical, and using it in the way that benefits us.
Exactly. We have to figure out how to make technology work for us, not the other way around. And, not get so sucked into the digital world that we forget about real life, real connections, the things that actually matter.
It's like, are we really the ones in the driver's seat when we're online?
Mm-hmm.
Or are those algorithms, that targeted content, are those the ones really steering us in a certain direction, Something I think about all the time.
It's a question we should all be asking ourselves, definitely. And that takes being honest with ourselves. How are we using technology? How does it make us feel? And being willing to step away when we need to.
So as we try to make sense of, everything that's going on, with reality feeling more and more like science fiction every day, what are like the big takeaways from these essays? What can we actually learn from 1984 that can help us deal with the world we live in today?
I think the most important thing is realizing that the future isn't set in stone. What Orwell wrote, it's a warning, not a prediction. It's on us to decide what kind of future we want, for better or for worse. And that starts with each of us, the choices we make every single day. How we process information, how we treat each other, and how we fight back against anyone who tries to limit our freedom.
It's about taking back our power to think critically, to be empathetic, to connect with each other. Those values that Orwell, even when he was writing about something as dark as 1984, those are the things that really matter.
Absolutely. And it's an ongoing fight to protect them, right? It takes constantly being aware, being involved, and being willing to speak up for what's right, even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable.
So to circle back to that question we started with, is resistance really futile in this post-truth world?
I think the answer's inside each of us, It's about realizing the power we have, every single one of us, to change things, and then actually doing something with that power, whatever that looks like for you.
It's like that saying in 1984, if there is hope, it lies in the proles. Today, it's about all of us. If there's hope, it's with us, if we're informed, if we're involved, and if we care enough to stand up for what we believe in. This has been an incredible deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us as we explored the world of 1984 and, honestly, how relevant it still is in this crazy world. Remember, the future isn't something that just happens to us, it's something we create.